Hey guys, welcome back to the Grant Mitt Podcast, episode number 89. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about first principles thinking, how to start taking complex situations, business, or life problems and making them as simplistic as possible. First principles thinking changed the way I did everything. And as I started learning, dissecting the actual method, I actually realized that my best and greatest decisions that I've ever made in my life, in my friendships, in business, in anything, I utilized first principle thinking. And then when I looked back on all the different people I've studied over the years who've also been successful or just close friends who are running, multi-million or multi-billion-dollar businesses, I realized that they always think from this perspective. School has done a lot of interesting things to society and has greatly affected the way people think. And I think the mistake that school has done is it forces us to think in a specific box. It doesn't force us to question why we do things, why the person's telling us those things, and are the decisions that we're doing, do they actually make sense? And when you learn how to think, it's a plug and play situation that you can apply to nearly anything. Because no matter how smart you are, no matter how far you progress, how much success you have, you're going to consistently deal with ebbs and flows in life. You're going to deal with change. And most importantly, you're going to deal with challenges. So knowing how to properly critically think, make and assess difficult decisions is going to shape ultimately how successful you are. So I'm going to break this down for you guys in detail. I'm put in also a couple of stories and examples so you can really comprehend and understand what first principle thinking is and how you can apply it to your life, your business, and just your personal life, because we all deal with those things and it's important to know how to handle that as well. Okay. So the first thing with first principle thinking is assessing what are the fundamental truths, or what are the most basic assessments of what you're trying to understand. A simple way to look at this is if I ask two people, okay, one person, let's say person A is utilizing first principles, and the other person is an MBA from one of the smartest universities that has studied vehicles, auto manufacturing, and every moving part of it. If I ask both of them, hey, tell me what is a car? The difference in their explanation is going to be completely different. The person with the MBA that studied manufacturing, auto manufacturing, and every single moving part of that automobile is going to sit there and give us a 10 to 20 minute explanation on every moving part of the car, how the engine is made, how it's constructed, how it goes from point A to point B, and all these different things. If I ask the person that's utilizing first principle thinking, I said, what is an automobile? What is a car? They're going to say, well, it's an object that moves a person or group of people from point A to point B. Now, no matter who is listening, if you can understand the language that that person is speaking, they now fully comprehend what the purpose of a car is. We oftentimes make things a hell of a lot more complicated than they need to be. And I think this probably goes back to the way that school teaches you to be. In school, complex or complicated equals intelligent. Knowing a lot of random things equals intelligence, equals progress, equals reward. So in school, if you know a bunch of random things and a bunch of different random subjects and you have a great memory, you're rewarded and classified as the most intelligent person. When in reality, you may have the most intellectual capabilities or IQ, but that doesn't always translate into real life. If we all look back, I know we're all different age groups. It makes me feel old even saying this, even though I still think I'm young, but I'm coming up my 10-year high school reunion. So this is like making me feel super old. I think it's going to be this year, maybe next year. And think back, and I want y'all to think like, what is the valedictorian doing now? And most valedictorians, while they're extremely intelligent, they're great at listening to others and following orders. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing because everybody has a role in society, but if school's measurement of intelligence was correct, then on a majority basis, the valedictorian should be the wealthiest or most successful person. But if you look at the studies, where they follow all different types of people, from high school and from college and different, skill sets and things like that, you quickly find out that that is not the case. And so it's important to start thinking differently, all right? Now, a couple different things, all right? And there's a 3-step process that I typically like to use, but I kind of even like to make it more simple, but I want to break it down in a 3-step process to really help you contextualize this, okay? So number 1, analyze things in the most simple form. Always ask why, how. Just simply question everything. So a good exercise, I tell this to people all the time that want to become entrepreneurs, is simply start asking very simple questions on the places that you decide to go eat, the coffee shop that you go to, the airline you choose to fly, the hotel you choose to stay in. And I want you to just ask these simple questions. Why did I decide to spend my money here? Why did I go here? Maybe ask people, hey, why do you shop at this brand instead of this one? And what you're going to find out is even the smartest, high IQ people are going to be like, oh, I just love the music here. And they love this coffee shop so much that if they change the music, if the one person that was making $12 an hour quit, broke up with his girlfriend, got sad, quit, all of a sudden they got another person that controlled the playlist at that coffee shop, they may lose 40% of their customers overnight, and no one would know why. They would think it's the coffee, they would think it's the management, they would think it's the customer service. Meanwhile, the entire time, people just loved the vibe of the place and they thought it had amazing music. But if you don't ask the customers, hey, why do you come here instead of the one down the street? Oh, I just love the design. Oh, I love this one thing that comes with my coffee. Oh, I love that person at the front desk. And they're going to tell you so simple things that you're like, wait, oh, really? That you would have never thought of because it's so simple. And when you look at the best products and services and the best people, why massive groups of people purchase those products, listen to those people, are typically extremely simplistic things. And that's when you start assessing why people do things and you realize how simple the world really is. We just make it complex for no reason. Complexity does not equal intelligence. Simplicity does. When you look at an iPhone, has anybody read a manual on how to ever operate an iPhone? No. You get on this thing, it is clear as day what to do. You know exactly what everything means. The best things do not need a manual. The complex things do. Okay, that's not scalable. Okay, number 2. This is key. If you're an overly analytical person or you get anxious a lot, which I think you can control, we've talked about this another time, but that's another conversation. I want you to make each problem wait its turn. Okay, when you're analyzing or you're critically thinking about a situation, a problem, a business, a relationship, a decision, I want you to make every problem wait its turn. So let me give you an example. You're starting a business. You're like, let's say the first thing is, how do I create this product at scale? And let's say question number 2 is, how much money do I need? Do not worry about the money part until you know how much you need to produce and how to produce it. Because if you don't know that, if you had $100 million, you wouldn't be able to do the first part anyway, so it doesn't even matter. You can solve part 2, but you need to let it wait its turn. So put your problems in order. This helps you kind of calm down and take step by step by step. The best example of this, everyone here has probably put together a puzzle before. The puzzle slowly reveals itself as you add each piece. And to any problem that you're solving in life, no matter how complex or difficult or new, the problem or the answer slowly reveals itself as you take slow steps towards it. And a lot of times it's more so that it actually is a completely different answer than you could have ever anticipated. Or the product or the service or the business or the result is so much more different than you ever thought it would be. But progress gives you the answers that you need to progress forward. But you have to keep things simple. Okay, number 3 is simply just remember the first 2 steps, but never stop asking why, how, and who. So let's say you make a business successful. The economy is always changing. The market is always changing. People are always changing. If you're in a relationship, you're always changing. The person that you're married to or dating is always changing. If you have friendships, they're always changing. You're always changing. Life is always changing. So you have to always know that life is changing, so you have to ask the right questions. So if your business has been super successful this year, say, why did people buy our products more than this company? Why were we so successful? What did we do good? What could we have done better? What went wrong this year? All those simple things lead you to very simplistic answers. And many times also, they'll help you. For example, if I ask you the question, why can't your business do 10 million in sales instead of 1? You're going to have a knee-jerk reaction. Well, this, and this. And that's usually the problems that you have to solve. And that's how you start utilizing first principles. So I'm going to give you an example, okay? So my cousin, one of her best friends, she's very entrepreneurial, and she wanted to start, oddly, a pickle business. Like, for some reason, she's loved pickles forever. And it just so happens that her and her friend are incredible at making pickles. I'm not even a big pickle person, and they're incredible. And they started making of them, 20, 30, batches of it. And people are like, these are incredible. I've never had anything like this. So much so that, like, people that she worked with that were entrepreneurs were trying to buy the company before it was a company. That's how good they were. And they'd been doing it for a while. They got the branding. They got a great name. They put it in these cool glass jars that look super nice. So I kept seeing this, and she kept saying, hey, let's get together. Like, I just want your advice on this. I want to hear your thoughts, blah, blah, blah. And we're super close. So I was like, cool, yeah, let's, like, grab drinks. So she brings a notepad, and you could tell she was a little bit overwhelmed because she's like, Grant, like, we're great at creative stuff. We know how to make the product, but I'm not a business person. I was like, okay. So they start talking about all the problems of the business and all the things that they need to do and this and what about this, what about this. And 10, 15 minutes in, I'm getting anxious. I'm like, man, this is complex. I don't know if I can help her. And so I start doing what I'm talking about, right? I go, well, what company makes the most pickles now? She said, well, this one. I said, okay, what are their jars like? Okay, what does that cost? I said, how do they sell it? Well, they sell it mostly in retail stores. And I was like, why don't they sell it online? She said, well, it's not scalable. And I was like, why? Because you got to put ice in each one. It takes longer. You have this, you have this. I'm like, okay, so the market for pickles is what percentage in retail settings or whatever the case is? She's like, basically 90-something%. I said, okay. And so we start going through, and she's listing me all these problems. And so even the guy that's telling you to first principle thinking, if they start saying all this crazy stuff, even I'm going to get overwhelmed. So everyone's like this, okay? So remember, keep the questions simple, and you're going to get simple answers and make them wait their turn. So the first thing that we figured out after she was going through all these problems, and I was like, okay, let's like break this down into a very simplistic thing, because she was like, Grant, do we have a glass bottle or do we do this? The problem is it won't look as good. She's asking all these things. And I was like, how many pickles can you guys make, like pickle jars, can you guys make in 2 days? And she's like, if we work nonstop, 100. And I was like, is that like stressful or is that like really easy to do? She said, man, it's stressful. It's a lot of work. And I'm like, okay. And then what would that equal in sales? And I was like, is it possible to do more? And so we really come to the conclusion that that's not scalable and that's not going to work. And that's not even a legit business. Okay. So we're like, okay. And I go, how do people make a shitload of pickles? That's literally what I said. She's like, I don't know. And I was like, well, the companies that you say that, make the most and sell the most, how do they do it? She's like, I don't know. And I was like, okay. So would you say the question of how to make a shitload of pickles is more important than the jar right now? And she's like, well, yeah. And I go, exactly. So it's more important to figure out how to make a ridiculous amount of pickles than the jar, the logo, and your costs and getting that all down. Because if you don't even know the simple structure of like, where do they make these? How do they make it? And what does it cost to make? And is it doable? And what problems persist with it? Then there's no point of debating and thinking about Is it in a jar? Is it in a plastic container? How is this in? What is the logo? All this stuff. That doesn't matter. You already make great pickles, but you don't need to worry about getting your costs down if you don't even know how to make the most of them. So I said, okay, that's number one. And then she starts going into the costs, and it's like, okay, this is how much it costs per jar, and this is a profit. And we're like, okay, that's not scalable. So I'm like, that's number two. And then number three is how to sell a lot. So we break down, and after 30 minutes of going through everything, I was like, okay, let's only worry about these problems. And I'm gonna cuss because this is just how I am in real life, is I'm not a robot if you guys didn't know this. But number one, I'm like, all right, how do we sell a shitload of pickles? Number two, how do we get our costs down? Step three, how do we sell a shitload of pickles? And she's like, oh, that makes me feel so much better. And I was like, now look, this is the rule. Do not worry about step two and step three until you figured out how to make a shitload of pickles. And the reason why that is so important, because if you don't know how to make a ton of the product that you're talking about and how to do it, what are the arrangements, what are the costs, and what problems are gonna consist of it, then you may start solving problems that don't even matter. Because when you go seek those simplistic first answers, it's also going to reveal a new set of problems that you did not even know that were there. She may find out that she's going to need millions of dollars in lines of credit. She's going to need facilities to store these things. She's going to have to pay, like, there's so many things that they're going to learn in each one of those steps. But as we talked about earlier, as you start adding pieces to the puzzle, what actually, comes out of it is going to start revealing itself, and it may not be what you expected. So start with the simple, basic principles. And, this is just the biggest mistake. And this is why, like, early on in entrepreneurship and in sales, I love working with or hiring people who don't have a ton of experience. Because if they're talented, I can teach them how to think, and whatever they specialize in, they can flourish and go to an unbelievable level and be super successful either in the company or just in life. And it's all about simplifying every single thing that you're doing. Messaging, marketing, the products and services that you provide, why you are dating or not dating that person, why you are friends with this group, why you live in this city. It's sometimes so basic that you would never, ever guess. We just overthink everything. I'll tell you a quick story. So my first love was sports. If you know anything about me in the first chapter of my life, all I thought about, I was obsessed with business too, but I was too young, right? But all I talked about was primarily football. And I was a high school quarterback, and Texas high school football is no joke. It's like a religion. I played in front of 5,000 to 12,000 people a week, which full out stands. There was times we were on like ABC 13. If you scroll all the way to my bottom of my Instagram, I still have stuff where we're on ABC and they were videoing us, and you can see me, throwing touchdown passes and stuff like that. But anyways, one time I was at practice, and if you think about a head football coach, and where I went to high school, the head football coach is one of the best in the state. They're thinking about so many different things at once. The offensive line, the receivers, the defense, the position coaches, the coordinators, the breakdown of the play, the coverage, the protection. I know I'm saying a lot of things if you guys don't know about football, but in other words, it's a lot of stuff. And as quarterback, which is what I played, you're the field general. You have to be pretty much as intelligent as the coach, and you have to control the flow of the offense. Every single thing that you do is on a microscope, not only from the other opposing team, not only the fans, but also your team, your coaches. And I remember I was going into, I think, the second game of the year, my senior year. And at the high school, during the practices, we'd always have kids in middle school and stuff just come up to the high school just to watch practices, hang out. And a lot of times it was because their brothers played on the varsity team. So they'd be playing catch, they'd talk to us. It was just fun for them because, they looked up to the older kids. And I had this young, probably 7th or 8th grader come up to me, and he said, "Hey, bro, when you're in quick game," which quick game means I'm in shotgun, I catch the snap, I turn, it's a pre-snap read. So if I'm throwing to the right side or the left side, I decide before I hike the ball, before I catch the ball and turn and let it rip and throw. Okay? So quick game is you get the ball, I'm flipping my hips. It was a predetermined read that I better leverage on the right and I'm hitting the quick slant. It's done. But I did not realize that before I actually, hiked the ball or got the snap, I didn't realize that when I was surveying the field, I was looking from left to right, I was looking at the safeties, I was looking at the backers, I was looking at the corners, that wherever I looked last in quick game, that's where I threw it. What's interesting is a 7th grader, even though he knows football, he doesn't know the play call. He doesn't know the coverage. He doesn't know anything. He's just looking at me like, why does that guy always look to the place he's going to throw it right before the snap? The coaches never noticed this because they were worrying about all the complex things. And I'm not faulting them. That's just like a natural tendency. So it took someone that knew about the sport but didn't know the details enough to point out the most obvious thing that I was doing. When defensive coordinators are watching film on opponents that they're going to play, those type of tendencies are things that they pick up. There was one running back that played in the NFL that was almost rookie of the year, if I'm not mistaken. And the second year had one of the worst years ever. And no one could figure out why until someone said that his mouthpiece, which they use to protect your teeth and help you, lower the chance of concussions, they found out after watching film that when he had his mouthpiece all the way in, he was running the ball. But if it was half out, it was a pass. And when they noticed this, the defense picked up on this, and it hurt their offensive production. His yards per carry got cut in half, and he had one of the worst years ever. And that's why first principles thinking can apply to anything in life. And that's why also getting advice from people who aren't too involved in the operation or involved emotionally in what you're experiencing, or that's why a lot of times the worst people to get advice from are the people who care about you most, because they're going to see you in the best light, and they're not going to view your decision making or your talents or your skill sets in a natural, objective way. You almost want to talk to someone that doesn't want bad for you, but also is not going to break down crying if you get promoted and become super successful. They'd be like, oh, that's cool. You want someone that's just kind of nonchalant about you, because those are the types of people that are going to see you for what you actually are. And they can see the product or the service or the business for what it's actually perceived in the most simplistic way, because they got their own stuff to deal with. And so that's why I love, when you ask one of these famous MLB coaches, he's taking people to the World Series. And if he's ever questionable about a player, like he doesn't like them or he doesn't know if they're good, he asks his son, who's like 8 or 9 years old, and just hangs out at the ballpark. And he'll just say, son, what do you think about this guy? They're like, oh, I love him. He's a great guy. Or he'll go, oh, no, he's a jerk, Dad. I don't like him at all. Because kids, they're not thinking about all these complex things and this contract and this and that. They see things so black and white for what they are. And as we get more and more intelligent, we lose that. And we try to sound so damn smart and think everything's more complicated than it is, when many times it's the most simple answer you could ever imagine. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. As always, check me out on all my social media channels where you can get short form and long form content at Grant Mitt. Also, make sure to subscribe to my free newsletter, the Recreate newsletter, where I send down breakdowns of things like this that can help you in your business career. It's completely free. So just click the link there. It's completely free to subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you guys for episode 90. Thanks, guys.